for this talk, I'm going to wear my hat as Professor of Intellectual Disability and Palliative Care. I work at Kingston and St George's University in London. And I'm going to talk to you about end-of-life care planning for and with people with learning disabilities. We've already heard from Catherine and Elora lots of really useful things about that. But I'm going to stress some of these things again. It's so important because all too often I find that families and care staff are just sort of taken by surprise. So, you know, maybe somebody has gone into hospital with an infection, chest infection, and they take a turn for the worse. And they take another turn for the worse, and they die. And nobody seen it coming. And people, families and carers are left with just so many what ifs and if onlys. You know, they may look back and think, actually, I'm not surprised that happened, but why didn't we see it coming? You know, questions, should we have had more aggressive treatment? You know, what happened here? What more could we have done? He should have died in his own bed at home, and we weren't with him. So in the next 10 minutes, we will think about the kinds of things that can help everyone to be more prepared. And of course, as Baroness Finlay said, you know, things are probably not going to work out the way you've planned them or the way you hope. Situations may arise that nobody had foreseen, and we've seen some really extreme examples of that, you know, with this year with COVID-19, utterly unforeseen circumstances that made it really difficult to provide the end-of-life care in the way people would have planned or wished for. Now, there's a lot of confusion about end-of-life care planning, and you may also have come across the term advanced care planning, and there are quite a few easy-read templates available. If you are looking for one of those, then there are links to them on the resources page of the PCPLD Network website. But I just want to say, just be careful using them. It worries me a bit, you know, that some people might think, you know, here we are, I've got one of these, I'm done now. End-of-life care planning is never a tick box exercise. So don't ever use these as a starting point or even as an end point. This quote was a learning disability student nurse telling me about this, and it alarms me hugely to hear that in this care home, everyone's end-of-life care plan looked the same. You know, that's not right. I mean, none of them should look the same. They're all very personal working documents. So a lot of learning disability services are thinking about end-of-life care plans, but I found that many of the things that they're working with, what they're doing is an emphasis on funerals. You know, do I want to be buried or cremated? Planning the funeral. Do I want flowers? Now, these are, of course, really important questions, and it is absolutely right and proper that people with a learning disability, if they want to and if they can, are involved in thinking about those kinds of things. And so, by all means, to talk about it when the opportunity arises. And Catherine has already, given some examples of when that might be, when there's death on the news or on the TV, or somebody you know has died, for example. And by all means, do write that down. But the funeral plan is really a what happens after I die plan, whereas end-of-life care planning is a what happens before I die plan. It's much more than that. So it's questions like, what do I want and what do I really not want? At what point does my comfort become more important than the length of my survival? At what point does my comfort become more important than the length of my survival? That's different for everybody. They answer that question. What will make me feel most comfortable and most at peace when I'm ill and when I'm dying? What comforts me? What upsets me? Who will I want to have around me? And what are the things that make me feel at home? Lots of people will say, if they could choose, I want to be at home, but it may not be possible. So it's finding out what it is about being at home that is so important and essential to that person. Is it missing my things? Is it my routines that I want to be the same all the time? Or is it missing the people who know me and who love me? So See if you can try and have those things, even if you can't be at home, those people, those routines, you know, in hospital or wherever the person is transferred to. And what you need to know and what you need to write down, as Catherine's also said, is what matters most to this person. So end-of-life care planning is not so much a question of how do I want to die, but how do I want to live, you know? How do I want to live in my final hours, in my final days, in my final weeks or months? And it's really important to think about this together and to anticipate what might happen in the days, weeks, months ahead about somebody's health and energy. And that's best done together with the person, with people who know the person well, but also with sort of healthcare staff who know what to expect physically. So let's look at an example. So here's Anne, whose health is fading slowly. She's getting weaker and weaker. Now it's taken Anne years to become independent, right? And the staff don't want her to lose that. So they keep encouraging Anne to keep walking up the stairs. But nowadays, walking up the stairs takes Anne the best part of 15 minutes, right? She's now so frail, though, that each day she only has about 2 hours of energy. So Anne is not dying, but she does need people to help her make a plan. She needs the healthcare staff to explain to the carers that she will have less and less energy as the months go by, not more, but less. And so at what point is she going to stop using that little energy that she has to climb those stairs? You know, perhaps that time has come already. Perhaps she prefers to spend her little bit of energy on watching TV or visiting her sister. And it's now become your job, who's always helped her to walk and to do her own cooking. It's become your job to help her to move and to do her cooking for her. And if you don't discuss this together and write down what it is that Anne wants, then the danger is that a new staff member will come along and thinking they'll do the very best for her, you know, encouraging her to walk. But in doing so, what they're actually doing is depriving her of quality time with her sister because Anne will be too exhausted. So I'm going to hand over now to two members of our PCPLD Network Specialist Advisory Group, who will tell us some of their experiences with end-of-life care planning. So first, Jean Wilson, whose daughter Victoria died 7 years ago of the complications of tuberous sclerosis. Now, Jean's family had known for about 2 years that Victoria was going to die. They just didn't know when. And Victoria had profound and multiple learning disabilities. She lived nearby in her own flat, supported by a team of care staff and her family who lived close. Now, Victoria was unable to say what she wanted, but the people who loved her knew how much she hated hospital. So she wanted to be at home and die at home, even if that meant that her life was not prolonged. So do not, under any circumstances, take me to hospital was written in her advanced care plan. Then we have Louise Heatley, who is now retired, but she has decades of experience of supporting people with learning disabilities throughout their lives, including the end of their lives. And in this picture, she's with our mutual friend Michelle, not long before Michelle died last year. So I'm just going to hand over to them and see if we can get the videos up and listen to what they have to say about end-of-life care planning.
On several occasions, Victoria was having huge seizures. So ambulances were called and she went in the ambulance to try and get the seizures under control. And on 2 occasions, there were support workers who really wanted her to go off to hospital because they could see how dangerous and painful this was for Victoria. But the ambulance people knew from her acute care plan that this was not an option. This is what was written and this is what was recorded. And this is what Victoria and her family wanted, that she would not go into hospital. They would treat her there. And two support workers found that extremely difficult and told their team leader that they couldn't hack it really. So they were given an option of going elsewhere. Do not resuscitate. They could not manage that because of their religious beliefs. When they saw that written down, they said, well, they didn't say it to me, they said it to the team leader. We would find that extremely difficult. If she reached that stage, we don't think we could follow it through. And because the team leader knew how strongly we felt, she came back and I said to her, give them the other option. If they really feel strongly, then they can work in another house with somebody else. Because I wouldn't want to go against people's beliefs. And it wouldn't be good for Victoria, and it certainly wouldn't be good for them. And I'd get extremely cross.
I'm a member of the Circle of Support for a woman who I used to support directly for a number of years. And we've recently been thinking with her, and to a large extent on her behalf, because she's not easily able to verbalise or express these things, about what she would want at the end of her life. And she's not approaching the end of her life, but it's been planning both in order to make sort of funeral wishes and death wishes known, but also what she would want, or what we think she would want at the end of her life. And so we've looked at quite sort of specific things. We've written a plan, and it includes how she communicates and how she likes to be communicated with. It includes what makes her upset, what helps her when she's upset, what helps to calm her. Little things like her possessions. So she's very keen on her hair slides, and it would be really important as she approaches the end of her life that she'd always have her hair slides to hand, and her money purse and her key, and certain sort of things which they have a use, and the use probably wouldn't be relevant anymore, but they would still be a security object for her. We're also thinking about who are the people, or we've written down, when we knew we didn't have to think about, we've written down to be on the record of who are the people who are important in her life. What would happen if, for example, she was taken suddenly ill. So we've named one person as her advocate, and the family have agreed that this person could make medical decisions on her behalf if necessary. But also if she were ill or coming to the end of her life in a more gentle way, who would be the people that she would want to come and spend time with her. I think it was really important that, as well as on this woman's circle of support, as well as her family members, there are also support workers. And obviously you as support workers, you are the people who are most likely to know the person's everyday needs. So you'd know about the hair slides and the money purse and the keys, and it may be that other people won't. And it's really important that this is all recorded, because you might move on, you might be supporting somebody else, and it may be that somebody who is newer coming in, they will take time to get that information, but if you've written it down, then they're going to have it, and she's going to be much better supported.
So thank you, Jean and Louise, and also thank you to Open Future Learning for letting me use those videos. They were all filmed in my kitchen earlier this year, just before lockdown, thank goodness. And that was for an online training module for learning disability staff, and the training module is on end-of-life care. It's almost ready. It's not quite available yet. It will be available from this month. So do have a look at the Open Future Learning site if you're interested in this kind of training for your staff. Lots of really good stories and lots of videos with Jean and Louise and some others, including Richard, actually, who spoke about funerals. He's also helped with that module. So Jean and Louise's stories just show us that end-of-life care planning can happen at all stages of people's lives. You know, you don't have to wait until people are dying. Victoria's family, clearly they were helped to understand that she was nearing the end of her life, and that prompted them to think about all the possible and the likely what-if scenarios. But Louise's story shows that even when somebody's not ill or dying, it's a good idea to start thinking about and recording someone's priorities, somebody's wishes, somebody's comforts, because the unexpected will happen, right? And if the unexpected happens, if somebody suddenly is rushed into hospital with something that, you know, and that deteriorates quickly, it's likely that that person will then be unable to be fully involved in making decisions because they'll be ill and feeling unwell. So when the unexpected happens, you don't want a panic situation when nobody knows what decisions or choices would be best for that person who should be involved or what they would have wanted. So think about, you know, what you want to happen, what you don't want to happen, and who will speak for you if you can't speak for yourself. And those are the 3 cornerstones of end-of-life care planning. And having said that, you can do it at any time. There are particular situations that should prompt the discussion and the recording of end-of-life care plans and the changing of the plans you've already had in place. And these are, for example, when the person or their family starts the conversation, or when the person has a new diagnosis like cancer or dementia or actually COVID-19. If there's a change or a deterioration in somebody's condition, or if the person has been hospitalized repeatedly, you know, perhaps they keep getting infections, they're in and out of hospital. The surprise question, that is, would you be surprised if this person died within the next 12 months? Now, they might not be terminally ill, but if your answer is, no, I wouldn't be that surprised, actually, then you need to think about this together and talk and make a what-if plan. Or if there's a change in circumstances. So, for example, the person moves out of the parental home. And there are ways of doing this, because, of course, that person might be young and fit. And the last thing you want is to jump on them with the question, you know, oh, how do you want to die? What sort of death do you want? So, you know, don't do it like that. These are really sensitive discussions. But perhaps you can ask them and ask their family something like, you know, oh, you're really welcome here. We're so happy that you've moved into our home. You know, we hope that you can be with us and live here for a very long time. But, you know, if the worst were to happen and you were to become very ill, for example, you know, who would you want us to contact? Who do you want to talk about what it is that you want? Might you want to be back with your family when you're really ill? Those kind of things. You know, it's sensitive, and think carefully, but don't completely ignore it either. And finally, I'm going to join the queue of people recommending books beyond words. They produce pictures that help people with learning disabilities think and talk about difficult topics, and that includes death and dying. And all my pictures in this presentation come from Books Beyond Words, so thank you to them for letting me use them. And one of the recent resources I've worked on with them is a guide for family and carers actually on planning ahead during coronavirus. It's a free resource that you can download as a PDF, how to support people with learning disabilities if someone dies during lockdown. And there's also a set of pictures that can be used during Zoom, on Zoom, to help people with learning disabilities to talk about coronavirus. And it was actually Richard's experience you heard earlier about attending a funeral on Zoom that prompted us to include this picture, to create this picture and include it. So there's a lot more to say about this topic, of course, but I'm going to have to leave it there. Because looking at the time, I think my time's run out. If you're interested, there is a more detailed 1-hour webinar available on my own website. And the details are here, and we'll see any links that you will see in this whole webinar. We'll make sure that you'll get them, that they'll be available, as well as the recording. So thank you so much for your attention and for listening and really help to think about these really sensitive but important topics.